And we're back like I never left. It's me, the Grandmaster, putting the laughter and manslaughter since 1985, Uncle Nabil, and I'm here with Nabil Knows. And one thing Nabil knows how to do is give good bad parenting advice. So here's the thing, a recent study has come out and it basically says that most of you are raising Now, here's the thing. I grew up in northern Nigeria. One of the great things about my childhood, we got to experience fun fear. We would walk down the street and get chased by dogs. A dog behind you makes you move at warp speed. I cleared some fences in my day. I fell off of trees. We would have the local mad person that was just on the street. There'll just be some guy. I think that's probably why we misunderstand mental health. Because here, you can be like, oh, I feel a bit sad, I've got mental health. Whereas in Nigeria, mental health is there's a guy on the street talking to himself with his underwear on his head eating grass.
Hey man, big dog, I need you, big dog, boy, look here. Boy, I need you bad, man.
There was one near our street called Bobo. As kids, a fun thing to do would be to get close enough to Bobo that he would chase you and then run off. And it was terrifying and exhilarating. Don't judge us, we didn't have roller coasters. I've been chased by a crocodile, I've been chased by crazy people. I've experienced genuine fear in my life. And for that reason, when scary things happen in real life, I don't freeze. I'm used to fear. Whereas most kids that have grown up in this over-sanitized, health and safety conscious, homogenized, every child gets a medal era that we live in now, have never experienced genuine terror and fear. So the moment something bad happens in an emergency, a lot of adults freeze because you didn't grow up having to deal with fear. So what I do is I watch horror movies with my kids. One of my favorite movies of all time is Stephen King's It. The first ever novel that I read was It by Stephen King, and I was 9. And, it didn't have any impact on my mental health. Anyway, I watched it with my kids when they were really little, like my daughter was like 7 or 6. And there's so many moral lessons that she learned from it. I was like, first of all, at the beginning where that kid gets dragged into the drain. So what went wrong there? He left the house without telling anybody. That's right. And what else did he do wrong? He spoke to a stranger. So now my daughter knows that if you speak to strangers, they might drag you into a sewer and bite your arm off. That might not be entirely factual, but it can happen. We live in Croydon. Watch horror movies with your kids. You might think it's bad for the kids, but it's actually really good for them. Raise your kids to be comfortable with dealing with fear. If you like it, you can take it on board. If you don't, you can suck your mom. So that's a bad parenting advice. Don't suck your mom. Unless, of course, you're a toddler, then or like a little baby, a suckling baby, then you have to suck your mom. This is not going the way I thought it would go. Dan, the cameraman, is laughing at me. Teach your kids to be good, but don't teach them to be nice. Now, here's what I mean. A lot of the time, as kids growing up, we were taught that we have to be nice all the time. If your dad's a crackhead or something, then it's probably an issue you have to deal with. Sometimes the good thing to do is not a nice thing to do. When people are raised to be nice, they are incapable of setting up boundaries. They are incapable of telling people to leave them alone. They're incapable of defending themselves because their whole life they've been taught that you have to smile and be the bigger person. No, you don't always have to be the bigger person. Here's the thing, if you're a nice person and people are taking advantage of you and it's stressing you out and it's harming your mental health, they're doing it on purpose. So with my kids, I don't teach them to be nice. I teach them to be respectful and polite and say hello and not to steal and not to lie. I teach them that stuff. But I also teach them that if someone hits you, hit them back. The reason the world is in the mess that it is in today is because most nice people are uncomfortable with getting up and setting boundaries. You ever been on a train and seen someone being bullied and harassed and abused, and then they leave and everyone's like, oh, are you okay? But nobody got up to help them while the bad person was doing bad stuff? That's because everybody in that room either doesn't care or they do care, but they're nice. So they're not comfortable with getting up and being stern and assertive. And you have to understand, being assertive doesn't make you a bad person. I'm going to say this to all the parents of daughters. Please, stop teaching your daughters that if a boy is picking on you in class, it's just because he likes you. There are parents that actually say this is the worst thing you could ever say because they then learn to pair that negative behavior with affection. And that's why they end up with Chad the head or Gavin the right? And you're like, why doesn't she leave him? It's because her whole life she's been taught that she needs to tolerate this kind of behavior. If there's a kid in your kid's class that's being mean to your kid, don't tell your kid to kill that kid with kindness. Tell your kid, stop talking to that kid. If that kid keeps on bothering your child, you turn up and say something to the teacher. And even better, if you're raising nice kids, you better teach them how to defend themselves. You need to get them enrolled in judo or jiu-jitsu or kickboxing or something. Give them some kind of confidence to back up their niceness. The best defense against violent, evil people is good people who are better at violence. That is today's good, bad parenting advice. One of the downsides of how gender roles now are not really observed or taught is that, yeah, it's great because girls can take part in more things that it was taboo for them to take part in, which is fantastic. One of the downsides is now for young boys, there's less taboo in picking on girls. There's less taboo in even hitting girls. I used to be involved in a lot of youth stuff, so I'm seeing more and more of these things. We see videos on YouTube and Instagram all the time of girls being picked on by guys or by young boys. They don't live in an era where it's like a shameful or is as shameful as it was when I was growing up. When I was growing up, fighting a girl was the worst thing you could do. Now it's happening all the time. Boys and girls are squaring up to each other. In these circumstances, teaching your kids that, oh, if someone is picking on you, it means they like you, which is something I grew up hearing a lot. It's the worst thing you can do because you are normalizing abusive behavior. I had an issue at my kid's school. Some boy thought that it would be a good idea to pick on my kids, and you may not have met my kids, but I raised them. So if you're a kid my kid's age, picking on them is not a good idea. Anyway, a kind of whoop-ass was opened. Even though my child didn't start it, they finished it. I had to then sit through meetings and try, because basically my kid got the same punishment as the male child who was instigating the issue against my child. And this is a problem we're seeing happening across schools. So the schools are part of this problem as well. It's not just the parents. The teachers will do nothing when somebody is picking on a quiet kid. A lot like what the UN does. They do nothing while somebody goes around bullying other kids. But then when the quiet kid responds, everybody condemns the quiet kid. Society as a whole has learned this from the culture that we have at schools, where, you're seen as just as bad as the instigator when you respond to them instigating. I don't support violence illegally. I love MMA, I love boxing, but I don't support just going around hurting people. What I'm saying is, when somebody is intruding on your space, when somebody is saying stuff about you, you have the right to respond. You should be allowed to respond. But what we're seeing in schools and something I've seen, in my own personal life, dealing with kids, my kids, and even kids in my family and kids of my friends, is that teachers now will sit down and say nothing while some child who clearly has behavioral issues continues to pick on other kids, continues to instigate issues with other kids. They do nothing. And then at home, the parents do nothing because discipline is a myth these days. If you're a parent with a kid who has behavioral issues, who talks to you any type of way, who constantly picks on other kids, and you're like, oh, no, my baby isn't that bad. Oh, you know what he's like. Oh, what is he like? If you're one of those parents, remember that your 10-year-old boy in 4 years is going to have a growth spurt and be 6'3". He's not going to be so cute anymore. He isn't cute to other people anyway, but once that boy hits 6'3" and he's a teenager, he's too far gone, and that becomes a problem. And if you're a head teacher of a school, if you're a teacher at a school, you need to understand as well, you cannot allow these kids to run wild and pick on kids and then punish other kids for sticking up for themselves, because you're not teaching them morals. What you're doing is you're teaching them that they need to sit down and be quiet when bad things are happening. This also contributes to bystander behavior. Nobody wants to stick up for anyone else. We're seeing women getting their purses snatched and things, and nobody does anything. Why? Because in school, when you got up and you did something to the kid that was bullying another kid, you got the same punishment as the bully. Or if you stuck up for yourself, you got the same punishment as the bully. We are raising a society of subservient bystanders and cowards that will do nothing, all because they're afraid that they're going to be punished for being moral. And it's so sad. It's really unfair. If you're watching this and you're a head teacher, you're a parent, you need to do something about this, because those kids are going to grow up to be adults and you're raising assholes. Alright guys, so great announcement to make. I'm starting a Patreon. So obviously it costs a lot to keep the lights on and not get kicked out of the cinema here. Lots of exclusive content for all my followers, for all my patrons. It's going to be cheaper than a cup of coffee, and you will be getting some exclusive cool content, from unedited clips from Nabil Knows to loads of bonus stand-up stuff. So if you like what I do, you've seen me like what I do, I want to do more. Help me help you. Help me help you.